They are working against time in a yearly competition few people ever see. Young hairstylists are competing for the International Gold Trophy, one of Britain's highest hairdressing awards. Some of the results may not be quite the thing for doing the housework in, but they're reminiscent of the elegance of the late 18th century. For generations, hairstyles have reflected social trends, and particular styles have been worn as an indication of rank. But in the main, the object has been simple and direct: to attract the men. Even after 2,000 years, the aim's the same. Today, an exclusive 100-strong association called the Fellowship of Hair Artists of Great Britain has become the leader of hair fashion, and twice a year, its council meets to plan the hairstyle that women will wear next season. Sometimes, it works closely with dress designers, so that dress and hair fashion go hand in hand. After about 6 weeks of discussion and practical experiments to decide style, length of hair and method of setting, the new line will emerge, and in no time at all, it'll be seen in Britain and other countries. And it's quite likely that, like this one, it'll be inspired by some elaborate style of centuries ago. But today, it's not just the girls who regard hair as their crowning glory. More men than ever are paying regular visits to the hairdressers. Half the barber shops in Britain cater for men, and they vary in style every bit as much as the women's, like this old-established and dignified Mayfair salon. Or this hairdresser's in Hounslow, Middlesex, where you can have the same sort of treatment that women get. And of course, one or two purely masculine things as well. You can have your hair permanently waved or straightened. And while you're drying, you can have a manicure. Trimming eyebrows is all part of the service. Today, more and more people are becoming colour conscious to achieve an effect and not necessarily to hide grey hairs. Hair tinting was popular in Egypt long before Nasser's time. And even in ancient Rome, matrons tinted their hair blue and white. These days, many girls start going to the hairdresser regularly as soon as they leave school. And some start earlier. There are now about 40,000 hairdressing salons up and down the country. This one is at Luton, Bedfordshire. The people of Britain spend about £70 million a year on their hair, but this only works out at less than 30 shillings a year for every man, woman and child. Yet about 5 times as many people go to the hairdresser as in the 1930s. More than 100,000 people work in the hairdressing industry, and every year thousands of young people come into it. Many of them do a 2-year course at a technical school. Some serve a 3 years apprenticeship at a hairdresser's, which may perhaps run its own school. Many hair salons are today more like social clubs. You can get a cup of tea and read the magazines. Some country hairdressers arrange a car service for invalids and old people. This hairdresser is over 80. He's one of Britain's oldest and works in London's Hanover Square, dressing the hair of women who've come to him for over 30 years and who still prefer the old methods. This salon, which was first opened 70 years ago, has now become part of an ultra-modern setup, with some of the old methods brought up to date. These electrically heated tongs, incidentally, will straighten wavy hair as well as wave straight hair. Attractive and unusual surroundings are an important part of a modern hairdresser's, where women may spend at least an hour and sometimes 2 every week. And the customer's comfort is #1 priority. Here, while your hair is drying, you can really relax. One woman's crowning glory can be another woman's eyelashes. for most false lashes are made of real hair today, another woman's hair. But now the fashion is not just false eyelashes. Women are taking to wigs again. Some wigs are made in this millinery factory from a synthetic material which is cut out in 2 pieces. Then they are seamed up just like a hat. They can be brushed and sprayed with lacquer, and when they first appeared, became so popular that more than 250,000 were sold in the shops in the first 6 weeks. For 21 and 11 pence, note the 11 pence, you can change your hair colour like you would your hat. Wigs are certainly in. You can hire one for 2 guineas for an evening's outing, providing you leave a deposit of £20 to guarantee its return. A wig made of real hair is valuable, and if you want a top stylist to design a handmade one for you, it can cost you more than 100 guineas. First, the head must be carefully measured, for the wig must fit well and be comfortable. Then, several stock wigs are tried for colour and style. 90% of the women who wear wigs for fashion have them made in their own hair colour. The rest, like this model girl, go to the other extreme and have something quite different. Then a sample of the chosen hair colour goes to the wig makers for matching. This is one of the most famous wig makers in the world. He is also the biggest dealer in real hair for wigs in Europe. Here, he blends 4 or 5 shades of the basic colour required to get a perfect match. Most hair comes from the women of Italy, France and Germany, with a little from Britain. The wig maker will pay as much as £5 an ounce for a suitable type of hair. Every wig has about 20% of artificially curled hair to ensure that the wig will stay permanently wavy. To put the curl into the hair, it is rolled on wooden rods and boiled. This traditional way of wig curling is said to be the origin of modern permanent waving. From the measurements given, a paper pattern is cut for the foundation of each wig, which is made from silk, waterproof net, bound with ribbon, stiffened with steel springs to keep the shape. Then each hair is knotted onto the foundation separately. When the wig is finished, it is water waved and curled to start it on its life, which may be 10 years. Then back to the designer for a final cutting and styling. And it fits her like a glove. Or even better. Hair today has certainly gone gay, and most women want their hair to make them look real pets. Though not too fierce, of course. What they really seem to want is to look just doggy. Thousands of people in Britain nowadays rarely see a donkey, except perhaps when they go to the seaside. Yet, in the last few years, the donkey has been making a comeback as a popular pet. Some people will tell you that he's fast becoming a status symbol. That cross on his back goes back, according to legend, to biblical times, though donkeys were used as beasts of burden long before then. They were introduced into England during the reign of the first Queen Elizabeth and helped to solve the transport problems of those days. But donkey owners say they are still the most misunderstood of all animals. Apparently, they are neither stupid nor obstinate. They just take time to think and then form fixed ideas. In Ireland and other countries, donkeys still earn their keep the hard way. In Britain, they've never had it so good. Sometimes they do nothing more strenuous than keeping the nettles down, which is not a job that would appeal to everybody. Mind you, there are some donkeys that prefer hay. It costs around 12 and sixpence a week to keep a donkey. This takes care of the food and the shampoos and powders needed to keep them in good condition. If they're looked after properly, they'll live for donkey's years, 40 years or more. This is how they begin. This foal is only 4 hours old. It was bred by Ron Brewer, the Donkey King at Southall in Middlesex. It'll grow up into a spotted donkey. Spotted and coloured donkeys, any colour except the normal one, are so rare that they fetch up to £200 a time, but most owners are reluctant to part with them. Donkeys are known as jacks and jennies. Crosses between donkeys and horses are mules when the father's a donkey and jennets when the father's a horse. Jack is now a week old here, and already he's got a will of his own. No one's going to push him around. Although the donkey population of Britain is believed to be around 3,000, getting hold of one isn't always an easy business. The demand for them is going up. And here are some being got ready to go to market at Southall. From the markets, many donkeys go to coastal resorts to spend their lives giving rides to children along the sands. The seaside donkeys have a charter nearly half a century old to protect them. A dozen rules are enforced. They must be fit for the job, and no one older than 16 or weighing more than 8 stone may ride them. Like most of us, they're entitled to at least 1 rest day a week. The normal run of donkeys fetch between £20 and £30 each. Sometimes it's possible to pick up a foal at 6 months for £15. If ever cars are banned from town centres, donkeys could provide an answer to shopping problems. Once you really get to know a donkey, it'll follow you like a dog. And be sure it won't starve. Some donkeys get more than a local reputation. This one is probably the most famous in Britain and now lives in retirement on a Sussex farm. Known as Lone Barn Farouk, he advertised for a wife and ended up with 13. That was the start of the Donkey Club of Great Britain, which now has more than 7,000 members, not all of whom are owners. Way back in 1951, the first Donkey Derby was held at Wivelsfield Green near Haywards Heath, and in the last 10 years, the price of donkeys has more than doubled. Meetings held here and at other places nearby have since resulted in the donkeys raising more than £50,000 for charities. They provided the funds for the purchase of a holiday home for disabled people at Lancing on the Sussex coast. The home takes in 20 severely disabled children and 12 adults at a time from all over the country for short-term stays. It serves the double purpose of providing a seaside holiday for more than 850 patients each year, as well as a rest for the relatives who normally look after them at home. These Birmingham children have come from the holiday home to see the annual donkey race meeting and the judging for the champion donkey of the British Isles. Donkey events have become so popular that a dozen or so meetings are held each season throughout the country. It's time now for this champion Jenny and her girlfriends to get ready for the next race. Picking winners in a donkey race is even more difficult than at Epsom or at Ascot when it isn't raining, but you can always hope for a tip straight from the donkey's mouth. And now it's a race over the sticks. Smaller hurdles, of course, for smaller mounts. But there's just a bit of the atmosphere of Aintree. Some mounts can be very small indeed. Tiny Tim from Ceylon is a pygmy donkey. He belongs to Jacqueline Dinage, the daughter of the founders of the holiday home. She bought him from Whipsnade Zoo for £70. Like all donkeys, he's friendly and intelligent. It takes all sorts to make a donkey world. But if you ever own a donkey, you'll discover they've one thing in common. They do know their own mind. Here come the prize winners. At the show any farmer will tell you is the greatest on earth. The Royal. Not that this hungry aristocrat is impressed. The Royal, more than anything, reflects the changing face of British agriculture. Every new idea, every invention, every technique that's bang up to the minute, they're all here. This is the latest thing in potato harvesters. How are you going to keep them down on the farm when there's so much to see? These proud Herefords, for instance, which can be worth up to 12,000 guineas apiece. Or these shaggy Highlanders. And, of course, these lords and ladies of the piggeries. Hi there. Haven't I seen you somewhere before? This is the age of power farming, of push-button agriculture, when machines take over the big jobs, like this binder harvesting oats. Or this Wellesian giant that has transformed the harvest from a long, hard slog to a smooth combined operation. The combine harvester, which cuts and threshes the crop as it goes. Or this handy weapon that makes baling straw so easy. But above all, it's the combine that has revolutionized harvesting. The mighty combine that delivers the grain and helps the farmers to produce half the food for more than 50 million people. With farming, a branch of engineering science these days, farmers must be up with the times. Bill Banks's farms near Spalding cover 2,000 acres of rich Lincolnshire land. To keep in touch, Bill has his own radio station linking the farm office with his own car and the farm foreman. Sometimes, Bill deals with farm problems when he's 20 miles away at the market.
Holland here, Mr. Banks.
Yes, Holland?
We're a little concerned about the potato markets this morning. Prices are not so good.
Oh, I have heard the trade isn't very good this morning. What is the price?
Oh, about £14.10.
Well, if you can get £14.10 a tonne, that'll satisfy me. What sort of yield has he got?
Around 8 tonnes.
Well, 8 tonnes an acre at £14.10 a tonne will be enough, I think. And I'll tell him I'll see him a bit later. I'm on my way down now.
Hi there.
Yes, I'm here.
Mr. Banks says carry on with the potatoes and he'll see you when he comes down.
Right, I'll be down in the field.
Bill Banks is always ready to try out new or unorthodox machinery. Britain's farms today are roaring with the noise of tractors, straw choppers and potato elevators, crawlers and balers, dumpers and ditchers. Here, Bill Banks's men are laying pipes with a trench cutter. It may look like something from outer space, but dig that ditch. In the fen country, the thing is worth its weight in gold. It cuts ditches 6 feet deep. And there's plenty for the automatic reed cutter to do. Long-haired operators beware. And it's also advisable to keep your distance when the manure spreader's about. In a summer which has broken all records, the combines have never been busier. They've brought in a golden harvest, and even the farmers are all smiles. Some went on holiday just when, in any ordinary year, they'd be taking in the crop. Farmer Banks, looking around, has a word with one of the harvesters. Once they said that combines like these couldn't operate in Britain. The fields were too small, the land generally too hilly, the climate too wet. So said the pessimists. Today, 40,000 combines like these bring home the grain, and it's hard to remember what a team of Clydesdale horses really looks like. Nature, machines, man's ingenuity go hand in hand, and the end product is a store of grain stacked high in the nation's silos. Farming progress would never be possible without the backroom men and women, the botanists, the soil experts, the chemists and engineers. At Silsoe in Bedfordshire, 120 scientists and technicians of the National Institute of Agricultural Engineering face up to the industry's mechanization problems. And here's one of the results of 7 years' experiments. A tractor a baby could drive. Well, almost. No gearbox. It's easy. Pull the lever back and you're in reverse. Push it forward and away you go. As this scientist secretary knows, it's simpler than typing. The accent in farming is always on tomorrow. Down on Basil Thwaites' farm near Leamington Spa, the cows never had it so good. Strip lighting, overhead heating, timing and weighing appliances. They're all in this cow shed. Milking park. It's all steel and concrete, sliding doors, non-slip floors, mechanical milkers. And the cows go up in life in more senses than one, on steel shelves. One cowman can get 60 gallons of milk from cows to churns in an hour. Will that be all? The milk goes straight through the vacuum pipe over the cooling surface to the churns. It's swift, hygienic, and efficient. And so is the work of the helicopter service. In the war against plant pests and diseases, the whirlybird is one of the finest weapons, spraying or dusting crops with insecticides, or even, if need be, laying a top dressing of fertilizer. Agricultural aviation is here to stay. Here at Ted Owen's up-to-date farm near Bristol, the fertilizer is spread and watered in with these spray lines. This irrigation setup lays on rain when and where the farmer wants it.
and in just the right amount. If only we had one of these during a heat wave. This forage harvester cuts the grass which will be preserved for winter feeding, a process that is replacing the old practice of haymaking. The grass mustn't be too wet. For his cattle, Farmer Owens uses an idea popular with dairy farmers today: strip grazing. The cows are confined to an area that gives them just the right amount of food. The fence is progressively moved a few yards. It is also electrified to give a mild shock to any greedy beast that is tempted to go nibbling out of bounds. Animal feeding lends itself to a constant flow of new ideas. And at Buckland Farm in Berkshire, they don't let the cows out to graze. They serve the food to them in a manger and have more control over the cow's menu. Chopped grass is fed into the manger twice a day. And the cows, they are said to prefer this to serve yourself. While on the subject of a good square meal, Norman Archer tries out the latest feeding ideas with his land race pigs. Somebody mentioned food? It costs between 12 and 15 pounds to fatten a pig to the bacon stage. Farmer Archer recently turned down 500 guineas for one of his land race boars. And talking of food, even farmers sometimes get hungry.
Will you please ring up Witham on the Hill and speak to my wife, tell her I shall be a little bit late home for dinner tonight. We've had all these breakages, and I'll be home in about half an hour, I would say, from now. Right, thank you.
Assembled this day at Hastings, greetings to you all in friendship.
The town crier was probably the world's first advertising man, for town crying or bell ringing goes back to the days of ancient Greece. Advertising, of course, is the ancient and gentle art of persuasion, the business of drawing attention. It takes various forms. Some are more effective than others. As our standard of living goes up, so the twin sciences of marketing and advertising play an ever more important part in our lives. They add to our material wealth and prosperity. They help us to sell the goods we make. And so it is that nation now advertises to nation. Here is a miniature Lord Mayor's show. It was transported all the way from London to Switzerland to help boost the British Trade Fair in Zurich. The big parade is so much national showmanship, arranged by the then Lord Mayor of London, Sir Ralph Perring, in the cause of British exports. Fairs of this sort take place regularly all over the world. They're even held behind the Iron Curtain, where the Russians are at last beginning to realize the vital importance of advertising in the world we live in. Nations now spend millions of pounds putting their goods into the shop windows of the international markets. To Britain, where we must export to survive, such efforts are vital. Marketing and advertising are the crafts behind all our trades.
One tells us what to make and how to sell it. The other creates the demand. Between them, they drive the wheels of present-day industry. Without them, the living standards of a modern country would go drifting downwards inside a few months. In whatever form it takes, from the humble sandwich man upwards, be sure of this. Never have we so much needed our marketing skill as we need it in the international competition of today. All over Britain, we have the vital production lines, of which cars are but one out of hundreds. The lines of national prosperity. It is essential that we all have the urge to buy, and so help to keep people working, to clear the production lines, not just of cars, but of goods of every conceivable kind. This is a century of mass production. To succeed in it, we must always be making more and selling more. And to do this, we depend on our marketing skill. Think what would happen if advertising suddenly disappeared like this. Or like this. If the windows emptied. And the posters went blank. Before long, we'd get this. That's why we spend something like £500 million a year on advertising in the broadest sense. The critics argue that this is too much. There are critics in everything. They point out that we spent only about 100 million on it before the war. But it's important to remember that the proportion is still just about the same as it was 30 years ago. What's really gone up in the last few years is the personal spending power of so many of us. We earn more, and we can thus buy more. In the old days, this would have been the housewife's unrealized dream of a perfect kitchen. Each piece of equipment well beyond ordinary reach. Today, thanks basically to advertising, these things can be mass-produced to meet a huge demand, and so marketed at a price that brings them one by one into everyday life. Advertising has its own codes strictly enforced to maintain standards of truth and taste. The men who foot the bill, the advertisers themselves, have their own society. Its members represent every part of our business life. They are responsible for most of the money spent on advertising in Britain today. This vast national expenditure is administered by the advertising agencies on behalf of the firms they represent. The agencies have their own institute, again with its own codes. They are the links between the maker and the market through the various channels in which the advertising is placed. And all sides come together in the Advertising Association, with its office by the law courts, which represents all the different sections and is the voice of the industry as a whole. But remember, advertising isn't solely the concern of the big battalions. It's part of our way of life. We find it everywhere. What do we do with the money we invest in advertising? Nearly half of it goes into the press, starting with the newspapers. A large part goes into the colourful magazines that women read so avidly, for women control much of the nation's spending. Not just the national press, but the provincial paper, another important medium for the advertiser. And of course, there's the whole vast field of the trade and technical publications. It all adds up to more than 200 million a year and creates the world of print that means so much to us. Without advertising, it couldn't exist in its present form. Then we spend about 80 million a year on TV advertising. About 16 million is spent on hoardings and posters and transport advertising. Outdoor signs make a bright contribution at about the same cost. About 5 million is spent on advertising on cinema screens. Then there's the literature of salesmanship. There's a big trade in the making of catalogues and pamphlets and other sales material, employing whole printing works. More than 40 million of the national advertising bill is invested in this way annually. Displays take up more than 30 million. And on exhibitions, we spend nearly 20 million. And so it goes on. This huge yearly bill goes out in employment and wages.
It feeds scores of other industries. In London alone, hundreds of specialist companies work in this field. The advertising agencies themselves employ nearly 20,000 people throughout the country. Now, when a manufacturer thinks he has something new to sell, he gets busy with his research people, his technicians, and his advertising agency to give the product the full marketing treatment. This is the first and vital step, for planned, scientific marketing is absolutely essential in the competitive world of today. The manufacturer believes he has something people will want. Let's imagine a new electric razor. But first, he must put it to the test by market research. Nobody today would rush into big-scale production without knowing the likely public response. This, the client discusses in detail with the experts of his advertising agency, and his product is studied. The advertising agency team will visit the factory and see the product and its potential production line. Tests will be made showing how the razor will behave under all sorts of conditions. The things that make it different will be noted. There'll be more visits as the various specialists get to know everything about the product. Meanwhile, the marketing experts will be studying all the facts. The likely price, the competition. Is it really better than its rivals? Is it really needed? Will men want to buy it? For however good the planning, you can never sell a product that people don't want. Interviewers will be sent out to talk to men about their shaving habits. A few razors will be made and tested, opinions recorded, and it's then, and only then, after all this research, that the advertising plans begin to emerge. The agency's creative people start off by putting their ideas down on paper. The visualizers and the copywriters take up the information given them by the researchers. What's in a name? The answer is plenty. Finding the right name is an early, vital job. Then a designer gets busy, for the finished product not only has to be right, it has to look right. It has to be attractive. Such packaging is a mightily important part of the whole long expert business. So it goes on, as the client and his staff, working with the agency, steadily put the entire launch campaign together. In this business, no detail can be overlooked. The big poster displays have to be studied carefully in miniature. Idea after idea is tried out, as the client and the agency director confer on every point. The number of campaign exhibits mounts. The whole attack gradually takes shape. The image that will sell the product is emerging. Orders are being prepared to buy space for the advertisements in newspapers and magazines and time on TV stations. Now it has all come to life, to move from theory and sketchpad into the expensive LSD of a live advertising campaign. There'll be photographic sessions, not one but many, straining for the ideal picture that'll sell the product, a perfect gem in a larger pattern. In all, hundreds of pictures will be taken, many very good, one or two outstanding. Finally, the best are selected so that this part of the campaign can go forward. And go forward it does, into the TV commercials, still reflecting the same ideas and pattern that'll make the product recognizable everywhere. Now one final check. Before the new product is launched, the experts pick a test area for a complete operation in miniature, covering the local papers, TV, the lot. Only then, after its trial run with all its lessons, is the national campaign launched. Success is now as near certain as can be. Not just success at home, but abroad, for the same ideas may go into the export market. But advertising has other sides, apart from its immense commercial importance. Consider what wise publicity did years ago to win the fight against diphtheria and more recently against polio. So it's no surprise that the Central Office of Information, a government department, has its own advertising section. Here, the latest publicity methods are used to inform the people of this country of issues which vitally affect their everyday lives. And, of course, the same applies to the great basic industries. The National Coal Board, led by Lord Robens, has given Britain a classic example of what modern advertising can do to extend the range of a product. Not only do we need to tell our story to ourselves, but we need to tell the world. The man who does the crying out loud is the symbol of the modern Britain we live in. He's the town crier of another vital industry, travel.
Hooray! Hooray! Hooray!
The British Travel and Holidays Association advertises Britain to the world. Every year, more and more tourists come to this country and spend more and more money. Think of the figures. More than 2 million visitors came here in 1963 and spent over £300 million. So tourism is now our fourth largest export and our #1 dollar earner. The tourist traffic has more than doubled in the last 10 years. For Shakespeare's year, the ad men made the point in all types of publications in 5 continents. Every so often, the critics say that Britain shows an old-fashioned picture postcard face to the world. Pomp and ceremony instead of progress. But the answer's in the results. It's the British way of life, not the diesel engines, that pull the tourists in. All the world loves pageantry, and nowhere does the style and swagger of the past blend with the present more graciously than it does in Britain. Yes, a modern Britain that's moving fast, and in it, advertising, backed by marketing, creates the mass demand that justifies mass production, which, in turn, makes it possible for us to buy more and more at prices which are kept down by the sheer size of the output. In this way, the twin modern skills of advertising and marketing in a country in which pageantry still has its place result in a higher standard of living at a lower cost.